Our guest today, Jeff George, has had a real storied career of over 35 years in CPG, food and beverage innovation, working at all kinds of companies from PepsiCo to HIllshire Brands, which is now a part of Tyson Foods, Campbell Soup, and most recently at Hain Celestial. In addition, as a consultant, Jeff has helped a large number of other CPG firms as well to increase their growth from innovation. And Jeff, just real excited to have you here today. Thank you again for spending some time with us. I'm just wondering if there is a common through line that you see regarding what CPG companies do, regardless of their size, in order to consistently grow through innovation and product development.
Well, Brian, thanks for the kind introduction. It's great to be here with you today. And the question is a great one, and it's a perfect timing for me reflecting back on, as you said, 35 plus years now in CPG, almost all of it in innovation related roles. And so I've been thinking a lot about kind of what makes companies successful versus those that are less successful in growth and innovation. And as I think about it, I think my take is there's four things. First of all, companies that put committed resources against innovation through thick and thin. And when I say resources, I mean talent, people, and I also mean the dollars. Where I've seen companies fall down is in tough times, they'll shut down innovation programs, or they'll push pause, and it really, really hurts momentum in the long term. So those companies that are able to persevere and maintain committed resources, talent, and dollars throughout tend to have better sustained success. Second, pipeline, meaning always having some really good ideas in the front end of the funnel. Again, where I've seen companies fall down is they get excited or there's a need to deliver some high growth number and they decide to pull everything out and launch everything. And whether that's successful or not, then when that momentum needs to be sustained and you go back, there's nothing left in the pipeline, and then it becomes a scramble, and it becomes very difficult to catch up when you have an empty pipeline. So an ongoing commitment to maintain that full and robust pipeline. Third thing is I think companies need to find the appropriate process discipline. So I've seen everything ranging from the Wild West, where there's no process at all related to innovation, all the way through very complicated, cumbersome processes. And I think there's a sweet spot in the middle. And I think companies that find the right sweet spot for them are the ones that ultimately have ongoing success. And then the fourth thing, the last thing, maybe the most important thing is being consumer centric with innovation, keeping the consumer at the center of everything that you do, all the way from the front end of the pipeline throughout development and through launch and even post-launch. You know, it's I think, again, where I've seen companies fall down, they get too focused on what they can make. They get maybe too focused on what a retailer is asking them to make. They get focused and distracted by other things. Those things are important, but there's nothing more important than solving problems for consumers. So being consumer centric throughout seems to be the key to success. So I kind of think those four things: having committed resources, maintaining that robust pipeline, having an appropriate level of process discipline, and then finally being consumer centric.
Reflecting on the different size companies and levels of maturity that you've seen over the years, as you know, something that I'm interested in is working with companies that are a little bit more medium-sized, smaller, or even just less mature overall in that regard. And I'm curious about, as you think about that type of company, what are there special challenges that they face when it comes to focusing on this governance process, both portfolio decision making and gate decision making? What are some things that are unique about what those companies are faced with in that category.
Yeah, it's funny, Brian. So having worked with the gamut of companies, you see errors, you see successes, but then you see errors throughout. And for small to medium-sized companies, in a lot of ways, they actually need to be the most disciplined, because companies like that don't have a limitless amount of money. They don't have a limitless number of resources. So they actually need to be the most focused and make sure they're working on the right things. And yet, too often, smaller companies don't have a lot of process, maybe not any process at all. It's more like the Wild West. They're kind of shooting from the hip. They're trusting their gut in the spirit of moving fast and being scrappy. But unfortunately, the risk of that is, while sometimes you can be right with gut decisions, and I don't want to dismiss that, too often those companies are wrong. And too often they're wrong by trying to do too much and stretching themselves too thin. So rather than doing a few things really, really well, they'll do a lot of things and not do them very well at all. So it's funny, smaller companies who almost need the level of process discipline and governance tend to have less than bigger companies. The problem on the other end of the spectrum is big companies sometimes have so much process and such complicated technology and so thick and layered governance model. They're doing the pre-meeting to the pre-meeting to the subcommittee to the committee and going through these huge complicated software rollouts that take many people and years and millions of dollars to do. Like that's a problem too. So that makes them really slow. So the advantage the smaller companies have is they can be faster, but there needs to be some level of process discipline and rigor to help inform, so the company can make better decisions and move even faster. And often companies don't have that.
And I want to, if it's okay, I'd like to build on that and what you commented on earlier about kind of this idea of the right level of process. So as you think about what that right level is for these kinds of companies, are there specific elements that you think are kind of must-haves, just bare minimums as a part of that governance process?
Yeah, I have a opinion on that, Brian, based on 35 plus years, and there's so much data that can be collected or hypothesized or theorized about a project, but it really comes down to just a few core things. And it's kind of similar to what we talked about up front. So one is consumer. Are you developing something that solves a problem for consumers? Is it something people want, they're willing to pay for? Is it a unique advantage solution? So that's really important. Another thing is, can it be made? Can you make it? Can you partner with folks? Is there a way to make this thing, this innovation that you're working on? And then thirdly, if people really want it, need it, you have a way to make it. Is there a line of sight to ultimately make money at it? It doesn't necessarily have to be profitable out of the gate, but is there a reason to believe that this can be profitable over time? And honestly, that's probably it. If you develop something consumers really want and you're solving a problem for them, you find a way to make it. And if you make it for them, you can make money at it. That's all that really matters. And often when you think about an idea up front, sometimes you may have really a lot of confidence in what consumers want, but you're not sure you can make it. Okay, focus there first. Other times consumers really want this, and we think we can make it, but we're not sure we can make money. Okay, focus on that. Focus on the thing that matters most among those big core things. So for a small, medium company, rather than get bogged down by the 1,000 different things that can be associated with a project, if they focus on those core elements to begin, and then look which amongst those are the biggest risk factors, then that can help direct and derive the most appropriate effort.
Thinking about those different categories requires input from different people representing different functions. And I'm curious, have you seen any good ways to help get cross-functional input and alignment on those core questions? How does that work ideally?
Yeah, one thing, and that's a really important point because at times, if one particular function sort of speaks for everyone else, but does it without the expertise to be able to do that, mistakes can be made and wrong assumptions can be made. So it's important to have that cross-functional engagement early and throughout a project. And I know one thing in my most recent experience that we did, we had what we called a project on a page. So it was basically the core elements that I just spoke of, plus the timeline of a project, all on one page. It may have leaked to 2 pages, but you compare that to a 50-page PowerPoint deck, which is what some other companies I've seen do. We had it down to 1 or 2 pages, focusing on the core elements. So we were focused on the right things, but to the point you're making, it was really important that when we ask the right questions, if you ask, do consumers really want this? Are we solving a problem? That we're engaging our marketing and marketing insights partners to make sure they're speaking to that. When it comes to how we make it or how it can be made, really important to engage research and development, manufacturing, supply chain to speak to that and assess the viability of that. And then ultimately line of sight as to whether it can be profitable. Again, finance and supply chain should be the ones weighing in on that. So getting the right people with the right level of expertise. It doesn't have to be a very time consuming, this doesn't have to be weeks or months of evaluation, but if you have the right people with the right level of expertise to look at an innovation idea and weigh in early, what that will allow the team to do then is focus in the right area. I've seen mistakes made where, we'll spend a ton of time, a cross-functional team will spend a ton of time trying to figure out how to make a new item. I come primarily from food and beverage, so how you produce a new food, how you produce a new beverage item, really spend a lot of time and money to do that. And then when it's developed, realize, consumers don't really want this. This is not something anybody's asking for. Or, hey, great that you made this, but it cost 5 times more to make it than we could ever possibly sell it for. And yet the team spent months and lots of dollars and time doing that, where they really should have been focused in other areas. So getting the right input from the right experts cross-functionally can really help guide the right efforts in the team.
Could you if we go a step further into then how that's used in decision making? Could you just speak to that both from a gate standpoint and then also a little bit from a portfolio standpoint?
Yeah, in this most recent experience is probably a great example. Having even that basic level of information can really help inform and make better decisions. A trap I've seen small companies especially fall into is not having even that level of input. So all decisions are sort of made based on intuition, based on gut feel. Gut feel is valuable. I don't want to dismiss that, but in a smaller company, that intuition and gut feel can be very well informed by some of these key factors. And in a very simplistic way, you can map out among a set of ideas which of those are most compelling from a consumer standpoint, which of those fit best within our manufacturing footprint, are easiest to make versus those that are more difficult, and can fit in those that have the biggest financial potential. So you can start to map and look at these things across those dimensions individually and then collectively. And just even at a high level, understanding it's all assumption based, it's all directional, but even based on that, the executive group can better make decisions about the type of portfolio that they want to have developed. So make sure it's a balanced portfolio, that we're not placing all of our bets on the long shots, the really high risk initiatives. We have a few bets there, but then we have other bets on the closer in, more sure things as well. And so even that level, and that's all the level of detail that honestly I believe you really need. I think another trap I've seen companies fall into is too much data, too many charts. Again, the 50, 100-page decks, and very few executives can really sort through all of that to help inform decisions. Again, you really just need a few factors to be able to make the right decisions on early phase projects. So yeah, referring back to this project on a page, capture core information, have simple rating systems or stoplights, whatever companies choose to do. And then that makes it very easy, very visual for executives to then look across projects and say, hey, of the 25 things we're doing, maybe here's the 5 or 6 or 7 that are going to really make the biggest difference, and then either kill the rest early kills are always good, or move them into pipeline for development in the future.
One of the things, again, I know you from your career, I consider you a visionary when it comes to using technology to enable these kinds of business processes. And I'm curious for your thoughts about, in general, how do you see technology aiding for these kinds of companies, for these kinds of business processes as they seek to achieve more growth from innovation and product development?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I agree with the visionary title, but I know maybe it's come from 35 plus years of the school of hard knocks, and I've seen companies operate with effective innovation process software and technology, and companies operate without, and it is so much better with, because it really done right, it really helps enable and accelerate the innovation process by using it. I think the key, and it kind of gets to where we started with this conversation, is getting the sweet spot. So that software solution needs to fit the size, the resource constraints, and frankly, the culture of the company. And when I think about smaller companies, a lot of them tend to be resource constrained. A lot of them tend to be smaller in terms of talent and the number of people. But then a lot of them are really scrappy too, and they have a lot of passion. They have good intuition, and that can be a competitive advantage, the ability to move fast. So, especially if there's a company like that and they don't have any process or any supporting technology, it's a great opportunity for them to really get the 80 for the 20 or the 90 for the 10 by finding a simple, streamlined solution that'll just focus on the things that are most important and provide them the data and insight to make better informed decisions about their portfolio, and do that in a really inexpensive, sort of scrappy, efficient way. So I think to me, it's finding in between. I think it would be a mistake to go like for a big, huge, expensive kind of technology solution, but I think it's maybe even a bigger mistake to have nothing at all.
Well, that's super insightful, Jeff. And I just want to thank you again for your willingness to share a bit of your wisdom with us today and your experience. And I just can't thank you enough for your willingness to spend that time with us today. So
Brian,
thank you again.
I love it. Thanks for the opportunity. I love the topic. I have a lot of passion for it. And I have a lot of wisdom, which is also code word for saying, for making mistakes for 35 years, I've learned a lot. And so I'm happy to pass along. We did talk a lot about today about the things that don't work as well. And it's important to understand those to avoid falling down those same traps. But I do feel like some of the things we talked about today do work, and they would fit very, very well for these small to medium-sized companies.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and have a good rest of your day. We'll talk to you later.
Hey, thanks, Brian.